Welcome to Curious Conversations with Tully and Sarah.
We sit down and chat with business owners, entrepreneurs, and some of the best conversation starters.
This is a podcast about real life lessons and people doing cool shit.
Trent. Hi.
Sarah, hello.
It's quite awkward when you interview one of your close friends. I have to give that, it's interesting.
And I feel like the last time we interviewed you was in one of your old houses on the floor. Do you remember that?
Yeah, just talking about 2020.
That was a rental.
You were in the opposite
York
apartment.
Street.
Yes. I didn't want to mention the
Yes.
street, but you just mentioned the street.
Well, I don't live there anymore.
Yeah. No, it was York Street. I remember it was upstairs. Was it post-COVID? Yeah, it would have been.
Post-COVID,
Yes,
definitely.
we did it inside. Yeah.
Yep.
You've just started your own video series. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How are you feeling about it?
Thoroughly enjoying it. It's something that I needed a push to do. But I think the more I'm immersing myself in it, the more I'm realising how much it fulfills what I love.
Yeah.
It's different to all other podcasts and vodcasts with athletes because you're actually diving into the athletes. Something you're known for is your vulnerability. Are you surprised what's coming out when you talk to these ex-athletes?
Yeah, I am. And I think that's part of why I love it so much is because not only am I sitting there as the host and holding the interview or the conversation, but I'm actually learning as well. So I really enjoy it from that point of view. Like so many people think that their stories won't relate to many people out there, but they do. And whilst it might be a different way of seeing their story, it will still relate to someone in some capacity on the journey that they're going through. And that's what life is. It's one big journey and we can all help each other.
Even being a consumer and watching and listening, the Robbie Nahas one, him talking about his mum coming from war-torn Lebanon, how he was raised in the commission flats. For me, I wouldn't say I'm a AFL supporter anymore. I used to be growing up. But it gave me a different perspective on athletes, that they're just humans as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that I always wrestled with, was that people often put you on a pedestal. And the reality is that, yeah, we see snippets on social media or you do an interview and it seems as though you have your shit together. And in reality, we're just as susceptible to anything that's going on in life, whether that be raising a family, relationships, key moments in your career or in your personal life that do genuinely have an impact on who you are becoming or who you want to be. And that's where I've loved being able to get different personalities through the football journey so far, but also other athletes and hopefully down the track, people that have lived even more normal lives. But we all have moments in time where you make a decision, whether it's the right or wrong one at the time, it still helps you learn and grow in some capacity. And I think that's what I'm loving, hearing those stories.
Yeah. You've got some really exciting guests coming on too, so we're excited. Now, I want to go back a little bit. You've started Shaped, which is the vodcast. What else have you been doing has it been 12 months?
Yep, just over 12
12 months. What else have you been doing the last 12 months that's fulfilled you post-football?
Yeah, well, we started We Are Possie, which was originally Possie Socks in the hub year or the COVID year of 2020, which seems really bizarre given it was a positivity company.
Yeah,
but
true.
probably timing was very good. So doubling down on that with a bit more time up my sleeve, have some exciting projects that we're working on, some in schools, but also our most recent campaign is around raising funds for BCNA through two guys, Jackson Baker and Oscar Baker, so the Baker Boys. So we've designed a T-shirt that was done by an artist who has also been impacted by breast cancer, Ben Ross, and they've designed this T-shirt that obviously percentage of the profits will go to BCNA. But I just love the whole thing of bringing people together that are on a journey and want to do something good in the world. And I've really enjoyed that process with our general manager, but also everyone else who's been involved. So BCNA, the Baker Boys, and our artist. 2020,
you started a business. Was that the first time you thought about post-life, post-football?
I'd try to suggest that I had always had a pretty good idea of knowing that football would come to an end.
Yeah.
And maybe at times was nearly too focused on what's next rather than actually just really, sharpening my tools in my current trade.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably the first taste of what it is to actually run your own business as compared to have involvement or an interest in other businesses. And I really loved it. I love that element of trying to find solutions to either challenges that are out there in the world or when you are faced them within the business. I kind of enjoy that process, but also just coming together with people that have similar ideas or passions, and doing that. So it was probably the first time I really tasted what business can look like and the work that needs to go in if you want to go somewhere.
What was the number one thing you've learned by going into business?
It's a great question. I think for me, you know what I think is the most transparency and the level of communication. Like you can never assume that someone knows what you're thinking or that they're going to fulfill something that you expect them to without there being a conversation, because I think too often the challenges that you face in business, whatever it is, are on the back of a lack of awareness or understanding, and that's often because there's been no communication or minimal. And communication to me isn't just voicing it, it's also listening. Like there's so often, whether it be in a relationship or in a business conversation, and Brooke will be the first person to suggest sometimes I need to work on this. You need to listen as well.
I think we all need to listen.
Someone recently said to me the best piece of advice they ever received, and he's quite a successful person. He said, "You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so you should listen twice as much as you talk."
I like that.
Very true. I seem to be always the quiet one in the room. People think it's shy, but it's just listening.
Yeah, no, you are good at you are good at consuming.
So you retired the end of 2023, right?
Yep.
How long before did you wrestle with the idea of retirement and the thoughts of what's next? I was listening to another podcast yesterday, and he made the assumption that all AFL players, if they play over 10 years, their first year out, they really battle with depression post their career. Is that something you can relate to?
Yeah, look, I think I've had... Do you want me to answer the first part of the question?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I was done probably at the end of 2021.
Oh, wow.
It's still quite young though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was 31. I think on the back of COVID year, and then, you know, the club went through some challenges through 2021, which took a toll on me. Not because I was owning it or involved, but I suppose being captain, you kind of feel like you carry additional weight than probably is what's necessary. But then I always wanted to promise myself to have a year where I wasn't captain, to just kind of enjoy without those additional responsibilities. So 2022 was definitely in my head going to be my last year, and then kind of just enjoyed the year and felt like my body was good. Didn't have any injuries, which really helps at that stage of your life, or career, not life. And then, kind of knew the writing was on the wall in probably my lowest moment in 2023 when I was subbed in gather round. I think it was round 4. I'd played my role had kind of changed. We'd brought in 2 very good midfielders. The idea was that I was going to play a little bit more half forward, and that didn't. It was going well in the pre-season, and then I played my first 3 games and barely touched the footy. So was kind of under pressure for the first time from a selection point of view in my whole career, which was new to me. Got subbed. Dimmer didn't actually speak to me after the game, so I just had this really low point and probably thought that maybe I have played my last game of AFL footy and wasn't sure I had, at that stage, the capacity to go, well, I'm going to just dig my toes in and really have a crack and get back in the team. So there was a conversation that I had with Dimmer that was pretty deep. I was driving up to Echuca. We had a couple of days off after gather round, and I'd snuck away with the kids to see my parents, and just always find myself when I'm sitting by the Murray River that's like kind of my place of safety and reflection. But I spoke to Dimmer on the way there, and it was actually a conversation that was really important because it made me realise just how much he was battling as well at the time. And the conversation ended up probably being more about Dimmer than it was about me at that stage. But, you know, fast forward 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it was, and he hands over the reins to Andrew McQualter mid-year, which was a surprise to everyone. But I suppose knowing what he was wrestling with, kind of, it wasn't as much of a surprise at that stage.
I didn't know that it was like round 3 or 4 that'd be crazy. You've gone such a long time with not being subbed. I feel like just going back to your series, now you can kind of understand some, like the Nahas, when he kept getting dropped and stuff, you can kind of understand what they were going through as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I got subbed, then I had a conversation with Dimmer, and he had said, Damien Hardwick, the coach, he'd said to me, look, we're playing the Bulldogs this week. The idea this year was kind of to give you and Jack Rewalt a week off every sort of 4 or 5, 6 weeks. Okay. I was like, oh, okay, right, interesting. So Jack got rested. I got told I was going to be rested, but then was told I was going to be sub so that I could freshen up and be ready. And I was like, oh, okay, doesn't really sound like the plan that was meant to unfold. And I kept having a conversation with Dimmer, and I'm like, do you see me in your best 22? And he couldn't answer it. And I was just like, that was the first time I was like,
shit,
fuck you.
Yeah.
And I said to him, like, I'm okay with it if that's the reality, but I just need to know whether it's just the fact that there's no role for me or that I'm genuinely just the 23rd player picked in the team. I'm okay with that, but I just need to know. And he just couldn't answer it for me. So I found that really challenging, and it probably gave me perspective for people like the Robin Nahases and other younger players that go through that kind of week to week where they are sub or they fall out of the side. And then I started playing a bit more midfield time and kind of found my groove and got a little bit more form back and realised that was kind of where my strengths were, not playing half forward.
Yeah.
So in those last weeks, were you already setting up life after football?
Yeah, I was, but I think the hardest thing for me, the transition from the moment you go, I'm done, to then starting to structure or work out, because as a footballer or an athlete, I have 10 months of my year scheduled every year for the last 16 years of my life. So I knew that what I was doing pretty much 3, 4, 5 months in advance forever, my whole adult life. And then you have to go start structuring it yourself. And then it was kind of like everyone kept telling me, you'll be fine, you know, you've been a successful captain in a team.
And you're thinking, shit, that doesn't translate to the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's always that little bit of like, oh, yeah, but I'm still going to be the new guy if I go into any role. And I really struggled with that, and I kept putting things off, worrying that if I said yes to that, then maybe I'll miss out on the next opportunity.
Yeah.
And got to a point, probably it didn't come till January, so 3 or 4 months later, where I was just like, I've got to stop saying I don't know yet, or put things off and just book things in and say yes and then kind of deal with it as it comes, which I did, and it took away a lot of that overwhelm of like, oh my God, what the fuck am I going to do next?
Yeah.
So I started locking a few things in. I really love telling my story, but through the lens of key themes that I think help you either perform at your best from a high performance point of view or bringing teams together from a cultural point of view. So I did a few of those to kick off my year last year or this year. And then a bit of consulting stuff with the Lions, which probably
Obviously
wasn't
did well.
Yeah, well, it was a great experience, but even that, it's like you're walking into a new environment as much as it's a football environment with guys that you've played against but don't really know.
Yeah.
And it took me a little while to adjust and realise that you're not going in there as captain, you're actually going in there as a mentor and to be a sounding board and not really, you provide ideas, but realistically I need to empower these guys to make decisions. And so that was an adjustment for me. And before you can even do that, you need to build relationships. So it really took me probably 2 to 3 months to understand the guys that I was working with. Because I literally started round 0 the first week of the season without any prep. So but amazing learning curve. So what I realised was that starting to say yes to those things and then working out how I best fulfil those roles was really important for my development and growth, but also how I could positively influence others.
Going back to what Sarah said, how you heard that statistic on the podcast, throughout the time that you've been retired, in your football career, I could imagine you've got a little bit of self-doubt every now and then, but has there been any self-doubt or like times when you're like, not feeling yourself?
I feel like you guys probably have a good insight, but
But we all have these moments.
No, this year's been a hard year for me. Like, as much as I've thoroughly enjoyed it and I promised myself to be curious and try new things, there's probably been 2 moments for me where it's like hit home. I always prided myself on being a really selfless dad, husband, person, captain. But I think what I realised stepping away from footy was that was in a professional sense. And as much as I've always tried to be there, I probably haven't appreciated the sacrifice that comes with being married or a child to a professional athlete. And that's been a huge realisation for me this year. I remember speaking of Robbie Nahas, he said to me, I promise you, when you finish footy, you'll be able to count your closest mates from your career on one hand. And I was like, nah, no way. Like there's 44 people on the list that's transitioning all the time. But he's right. Like I have some good friends that when I see him, it's great to catch up. But the guys that you rely on from a week to week point of view, there is only a few of them. So all these things that I was used to were all big changes for me in my life. So I definitely had aha moments. And probably one of those key ones, I remember sitting in my driveway. I'd got home, I think it was in the lead up to Dusty's 300th game. And since Dusty's old man had passed away, our relationship just hasn't quite been the same, and no one's to blame for that. It's just the reality of the circumstances. But I think it was the emotion of him playing 300 games, which is a special milestone. Probably a realisation of football being gone and that life is very different now. I sat in my driveway and I just said, I actually sent Brooke a text message, weirdly, because she was inside, but I just said, sorry if I'm not quite myself at the moment. I'm just wrestling with a few things at the moment. But I was like, at least I'm being open and honest.
Yeah, communicating.
And she texts back like, why? Like anything I can help with. And I just said, to be honest with you, we were going through a little bit of stuff with, Parker at kinder, and Harper had some challenges at school as well. So kind of sat there and I was like, I just feel like I'm doing a really shit job as a mate, as a husband, as a dad. I feel like a bit of my identity's kind of gone. Yeah. So it was probably my lowest moment, but it was also a moment where I was like, okay, right. So when I've been in this kind of mind frame previously, what are the things that I've done to make sure that I come through the other side, or that I know really do help me kind of be my best? So I kind of went back to those, and it's still a journey and a process, but I'm very lucky that I have an amazing person in my life in Brooke, that we do share a lot with what we're going through, and the kids, kids will be kids and they teach you something every day, but they're quite, like, it's an adjustment for them as well, like your family. And that's probably something I didn't respect enough, even
Dad's
through retirement and so forth. Yeah. Like, it's a big change.
Yeah. Change is uncomfortable.
You described yourself as selfless, and then picking yourself up when you're in that moment in the driveway, you needed to fill your own cup up. What are those things that you do? Because as Tully and I have learnt, you can only give to others when your cup's full.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah, I think first and foremost it's the awareness, and then knowing that filling the cup up isn't being selfish. It's just it's prioritising the right things to make sure that you can then be at your best. And for me, it genuinely comes down to routine. I refer to it as my daily 80. So I like to go for a walk, have a coffee, exercise, journal, and sometimes do cold therapy, which has dropped away a little bit. But now that the warmer weather's coming, I might start doing it again. But to me, they're like the 5 keys to me starting my day on the right foot. And then obviously the things that I put in place were, a mentor, speaking with them openly about how things are going. For me, like, conversation is just so important to people being able to help themselves, but also knowing that they have people around them that can help. And you can obviously go and employ services that do help you with that. But there's also lots of brilliant people in your circle that I'm sure will always be there to listen to. And I know that there's been conversations that we've had that have helped me, and me just kind of unpack what's going on in my brain.
We're big fans of therapists.
Oh, we are big fans. Your series called Shaped. Obviously, you're shaping bits of your life right now. But when it comes to other things like relationships, how much did kids change yours and Brooke's relationship?
Yeah, I think they do and they don't. But if you're not aware of it, you then realise what's missing. Like, for an example, our relationship started very different in a sense that you're already kind of, people are looking at you, and I know Brooke initially was quite reluctant to kind of show too much affection in public, and I'm not naturally a super overly affectionate person. And then that kind of, like, unless you actually deal with that as you go through your relationship, it just becomes the norm. So more recently, we've kind of just realised, like, Brooke just wants to be hugged every now and then. And by me being more actively aware and doing it more often, I've realised that it's actually a need that I have as well.
Yeah.
To the point now where she probably tells me to go away. But I think it's just so important to have that awareness. And when I say, like, there was moments where I was selfish through my career, it's probably that awareness more so than my actions. It was, actions from I think I was always sacrificing what I was doing in my life a lot of the time to make sure that I was available for the family. But of being available, or being involved or doing the right thing or what people need are two very different things. And that's probably what I've learned this year.
And what about being, because you're still working, so I'm not going to call you stay-at-home dad, you still work, but being at home now and seeing the kids more regularly, going to school, excursions and all those kind of things you couldn't do before, how has that, I'm going to say, shaped you now as a dad?
Yeah, I love it. And I think the kids have really appreciated being able to do school drop-off most days or school pick-up, either way. I know there were some adjustments from Brooke having me at home and in the office at home more often. Kind of, she was sick of seeing me so much. But as I said, like, it was a big change for all of us. The kids are funny because now when I say, I have to go and do something of an evening and I'm not home, they're like, oh, really? Like, it's almost like now they've done the other way and I'm always available. There's an adjustment there as well. So I think it has been interesting. Like, I've always tried to make sure that I can get to as many events as possible with our kids. But I think the more and I think this is relative to nearly every parent that's out there, like, the difference between our generation growing up and kids of today is that most parents, there's this whole work-life balance focus, and that part of that balance is being in your kids' world as often as possible. But that also builds an expectation that everyone puts on themselves that they need to be there, and then the kids think that their parents will always be there. Like, all right, the amount of conversations I've had with our own children going, there was so many times where I would go to a sporting event or do something at school where my parents just couldn't get there because they had to work to put food on the table. And I think my parents did a pretty good job of being as available as they possibly could, but that was just the reality back then. Whereas nowadays, I think lots of parents have the flexibility, or at least try and build it into their schedule so that they can be there. And that's great. Like, I'm a big advocate for it, but I'm also conscious of people put a lot of pressure on themselves from that point of view as well. Like, there's been numerous conversations I've had with people going, oh, how do I find work-life balance when I really want to be this available and present dad or mum, but I really want to prioritise making sure that I continue to grow in my career so that, we can live the life that we want to live. So it is a fine balance, but I think it's like the little techniques of making sure you put your phone away when you are playing soccer in the front yard, rather than feeling like you're always filtering through emails or, in between kicking a goal. And the kids are aware of it. They're across it.
Oh, I feel
Kenzie
that
reminds
so
me all
bad.
the time.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, Tal obviously battles with mum guilt, and that's the version of dad guilt.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, we're all doing our best.
Yeah.
I think it's more just the awareness of those moments where you can be fully immersed in your kid's life or your partner's life, then just commit to that. And phones are the worst things ever invented from that point of view. But you just need to be disciplined, and it's the small habits that help.
Yeah, you're true. Kids are so aware. I have obviously a 7-month-old, and she was in the bath and my phone was near the thing, and it message came through. So automatically I went to go grab it. She cried straight away. I think I said that to your mum, and I was like, okay, that's a sign. I'm not doing that again. I'm like, she literally told me not to pick up my phone.
Yeah.
I felt so
Can't even
bad.
speak.
Yeah, I know, she can't speak. I felt so bad.
Obviously, AFL success external, going for premierships, trying to win every week. What's success to you now? Is it still an external thing? Like, for me, I don't think it's monetary for you at all, or is it more internal?
Yeah, I think I've always been driven by the internal.
Even in AFL?
Yeah, because winning a premiership wasn't what, for me personally, I set out to do at the end of 2016. So my goals were to reach those things, but internally I wanted to live to my purpose every single day. And if I did, I felt like that was going to give us the best opportunity to be successful. And my purpose is to help others realise and fulfil their potential. So, and it's got to a point now where if that doesn't align with an investment opportunity or a business opportunity or commercially, then I probably am highly likely to say no, because it just doesn't serve a purpose to me. And that's been awesome to establish what that is and know what lights you up every single day. And really important, because you can get so caught up in chasing all the external parts. Like, I'm the first to admit that I love the finer things in life, you know, a nice car and having a nice home to welcome people into. But that's not for show. It's for us to actually give, whether that be our family or our friends. And, you know, you work hard for those things. But definitely for me, it's one of my favourite sayings: if you're not growing, you're dying or dead. And growth to me is what success is.
How long did it take you to find that purpose in life?
Well, I was 26 when I kind of went on that journey.
Yeah.
And I hit rock bottom to be able to go on it. So for me, the advice I give to people is like, don't let yourself hit rock bottom. Clearly some people will. But engage in being curious to what does genuinely light you up. Like, if you're in a job that you go to work every single day going, why the fuck am I even doing this? Do a little bit of work on understanding what actually you want to get up for. And if it means that you're leaving 10 or 20 grand on the table in the initial part, I guarantee you're going to excel in the work that you're doing. And at some stage that'll come back. And it might not be monetary, but it could be impact.
The success could be measured in the happiness of your life. That
Absolutely.
could be exponential. Yeah. Success just isn't monetary. It's like, you look at the relationships with your family. That could be a better success if you change things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I just want to go back. It was in my head before when you said this. You took a year or a year and a half off being captain.
2 seasons.
2 seasons. I have a question, because I don't know this, but when you went, and who took over? Dylan Grimes.
Dylan Grimes and Toby Nankervis.
Did you still feel this pressure of still being a leader? Did you have people still coming to you? Like, how did that feel, being a leader for so long?
Yeah, I did, but
He was like, sayonara.
Part
Bye, bitches.
part of my regret for the last 2 years was I was so conscious of letting Grimesy and Nank own their own leadership story that I tried to make sure that I was withdrawn, and like Jack Rewalt and myself didn't opt to be involved in the leadership group, but we kind of all made a decision that it was the right thing for the group to kind of grow in a different area. And it's probably my one regret stepping away from footy was that I feel like I could have been leaned on more, but maybe that was partly because of me being withdrawn, and that was only because I wanted to make sure that they felt like there was no pressure from, you know, what we'd establish as a group to kind of go on their own journey. And I know that I don't think they necessarily feel that way, but it's probably a regret of mine.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Is there any other regrets in life? I only ask that because I just finished a book about regrets and on your deathbed, and it made me question life.
No,
it made me.
You did ask that last
I
week.
did. I was like, it made me question. I don't want to get to the end of my life and be like, regret something or think, what if?
Yeah, probably for me, travel, but I know that that's hopefully coming.
Yeah.
Depending on our position. But I think when you make that decision to have kids relatively young, like you can only travel so far without it being kind of a burden. So I've done all the close kind of countries many times, but really looking forward to exploring other cultures, other parts of the world. And the hardest thing for me will be not taking the kids on that journey if we decide to go that way. But also I'm 34 and it's taken me this long to go to Europe. So
I just thought of something then. You obviously playing, we all go to Europe in like winter escape. How do you feel as a footballer when you are bound to Melbourne in winter and everyone is having Aperol spritzers in Italy?
You got to get off Instagram June, July. Definitely.
I would hate that because that's probably one reason why you haven't been able to travel so much is because you are playing through that season.
Yeah.
That would be hard.
It would be.
It is.
I get FOMO.
Well, I know definitely.
And
I
your wife,
feel like
Brooke.
this year of all years, a lot of footballers seem to have gone overseas to Europe, even through September, October.
Yeah.
And I think there's a realisation that they're missing out on a lot.
Yeah.
But it's still a good place to travel to, even if it's not the peak of summer.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's too hot in.
Well, we might see you in Italy next year.
I've already established that with you, don't worry. I want to finish with one final thing because on your show, I was like, we should finish with one final question. So I'm going to finish this one with your final question.
Okay.
I'm nervous for you.
What would you tell your 16-year-old self?
Oh, good question.
I really battled with perfection for my whole life and probably still have moments to this day where I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like progress is way more important than perfection. So as a 16-year-old self, I would just say that to probably not be so serious and enjoy life a little bit more while you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good one.
I like that. That is a good one.
Well, thank you again for sitting down with us.
I
No,
know,
thank you
second
for having
time.
me.
And if you guys want to listen to Shaped, it's on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
Yes, that's where they can listen.
Yes.
And you've got some exciting guests coming up.
Looking forward to sharing that with everyone.
Yes, I'm excited too.
Tal?
Thank you so much.
Love you.
Love you.
Trent, love you.
Love you too, girls.
She makes me say it. I'm like, I love you. I'm like dying. And I love
Trent
you.
says it more easily than you do, though.
Love you. I said it. I've said it 3 times.
It's aggressive though. Jesus. Okay, settle
Love
it.
you.
Thank you, Trent.
Thank you.
Thanks, girls.
Bye.